Hello and welcome to another episode of Heart-Centered Conversations with me, Jane McDowell, the podcast where I look at books with people, books that have inspired them and led them to do great things in their life. And today it's my very great pleasure to have I'm very proud to say, my friend and my mentor, Chris Lambert-Gorwyn here. So, Chris, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you. After that intro, I say I'm very proud and humbled as well to be your friend and to be on a journey with you. It's so my background is I have, I guess, always been passionate, always been of a big dream, of a big focus on what can I achieve in the world? How can I make a bigger difference? And always been somebody who, to be blunt, came up short in being able to maintain and deliver those dreams.
Okay.
For example, I was an osteopath for nearly 20 years, focusing on long-term back pain. I was really, really good at it. And I was constantly doing courses and learning more and helping more people. And yet I was really, really rubbish. Well, actually, not just rubbish. I just totally denied I was in business whatsoever and needed to make money from this. So I ended up over £100,000 in debt.
Yeah.
And
so, wow, I completely relate to that. It's exactly how I was in my practice. So for anyone who's listening to this and doesn't know, why would you if you've never seen Chris? Chris used to be an osteopath and then he, as he said, got into £100,000 worth of debt.
If only it was 10.
Yeah, exactly. And then turned his business around and now is just, blossoming in all sorts of ways. And I'm really curious, Chris, because I know we talk about books in this podcast because that's what the podcast is about, and I love books. And I know that you and your lovely wife Karene wrote a book called Grow Heart-Centered Business. Now, to me, and I know I'm a bit biased, but also I have read quite a few self-help business books. It is the best self-help business book that I've ever read, quite simply because instead of being that kind of story of, oh, I was down on my luck and nothing worked and then I turned it around, and you can too if you want to, which is great, but none of those books ever tell you how do you do it. Whereas your book goes into, really great bite-sized kind of chunks of, how you do what in your business, and also, it charts your journey in your business as well. So I think it's, for that reason and all the actions that you put in it, it's a great book. So I'm really curious to know what inspired you, what other books inspired you to write your book, because your book is so very different from others.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that's actually exactly why we wrote it and why we wrote it in the way we did. Because having gone myself from that deep, dark financial hole, really passionate, but really in debt, to going, oh, actually, I can turn my business around and earn a whole lot more money. And then realizing business is like riding a bike. Once you know how to do it, once you know how to ride a bike, you can ride off-road, you can ride on-road, you can do mountain. So you can apply it to lots of different things. That's why now I run 7 different businesses, and we've trained more than 3,000 business owners how to build their business.
How do you, when you say that out loud now and thinking where you were 10 years ago, how do you even think, what?
Yeah,
it's like mind-blowing.
It really is. I think everyone has that as well. When you step back and look at your life and go, wow, so much happens when you step back, it's in such a short amount of time. Yeah. Like I say, 10 years. It's almost exactly 10 years that I was over 100 grand in debt and my daughter was born, and I had to turn it around and make money because Karene wanted to be a mum and she gave up her corporate job to be a mum, and that's the only thing keeping us afloat. And that was only 10 years ago. And it's that whole day by day, I can tell you, it's felt like a really long journey. And, the concept sometimes days can feel like a year. But if you look at 10 years, it seems to have gone by so quickly.
Yeah.
But actually, I would love to say it's all because I am awesome and I just figured it out, and suddenly I flipped a switch and suddenly I went from not knowing how to run a business or make money and suddenly it was all okay. It's actually exactly what you alluded to. It's all the years of books I read, people I was inspired to, people I was learning from before that point, and then getting great coaching, mentoring alongside continuing reading, learning every step of the way.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love books. I've got fortunately the Kindle now exists, because otherwise I wouldn't have space for all the books that I have. But it's exactly that of there are so many great inspiring people, but all the books I say we, myself, my wife, have devoured and consumed over the years, all were little pieces of a puzzle, and they all gave us something. So people like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, all of these amazing, inspiring people who have achieved great success, have trained millions of people, and yet the actual how do I do that on a day-to-day basis was the missing piece. And that's what we needed a coach to actually kind of go, okay, you've got all this knowledge. Now, what do you do with it today and tomorrow? And then what happens? So I'm trying to make everyone listen to this. Get a coach, get a mentor, get someone who can help you put all the knowledge together and move forward. And that's what we tried to create our book to be, was actually, well, if someone hasn't got a coach or they don't know how or are unwilling, if we can give them the step-by-step bits along with the mindset, the motivation, and the stories of, oh, if they can do it, maybe I can too. It's that how to go from point A to B to C to D. Yeah. That's what we try to hope to do.
So here's a question. When you set out on the journey, when you were in that position, like, oh God, I'm £100,000 in debt, and I've just found out I'm going to be a dad, I need to change my life around. Had you already read lots of books that had inspired you, or was it a case of you went and sought some help from a coach? Because I remember you telling me a while ago that I think it was Karene said, look, there's a sales seminar on down the road, get your butt out there and learn how to sell. But so that was your kind of first foray into kind of business training. So did that then lead on to you reading some books, or had you already read some that you kind of didn't really resonate, and as you say, you didn't know how to do?
Yes, great question, because yes, I'd already been on a personal development journey, for want of a better word, for many years before that. I was always learning professionally, as in studying courses and books on how a human body works and be able to help my patients better. And alongside that, I was increasingly doing more and more personal development and just reading more. So I was already exposed to people like Jim Rohn, a little bit of Tony Robbins. I hadn't come across Zig Ziglar by that point. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I read all of these, and
my favorite, not.
Yes, I know you have some issues with his style and language and things. But so I'd read these, but it's like anything. It's almost like I took in what I could cope with. I didn't realize I had a limited capacity or an openness to it. So I took in a certain amount and got some, but a lot of those books I'd read then, I've reread many times since and got so much more, because almost like I could understand more what the author was trying to make. Whereas at the time I was like, oh, interesting. And life moved on.
Yeah.
Whereas then the second time it was interesting and, oh, I understand. And then the third time it got a bit, so it was very much like that. It was that sales seminar you mentioned, and then getting a coach was the real ignition and what really helped me get in action with all of these things I was thinking about and playing about. But it's also, I have to say, the reality was reading books and learning was a way of me hiding, if I'm honest. It was safer to think, oh, I'll just keep consuming the information rather than I've got to do something with it.
Yeah. And that's where I think that your book is great because it does have those actions in it.
It's got a lot of actions.
So you kind of get a sense, oh, I need to do all this. Oh, I can't just read the book and it was all happen.
Yes.
You actually have to, do that action that's making me feel a bit uncomfortable. The idea of, I don't know, picking up the phone and talking to people, or niching down your marketing message, or being confident and having, saying we are having a sales conversation now. All those things that hold lots of business owners back, because we all like doing the delivery part because that's what we're passionate about, and all this other stuff we have to do in order to get to the delivery part is usually outside of our comfort zone. And I think the way that it's charted in your book and gives you those steps and gives you the clarity on what you need to do in order to have a successful business, it's far more helpful than many other business books I've read. So yeah.
Thank you. And that is the concept, because we say to our clients so often, and people are always surprised that we say, so if you're not prepared to put a work in, give up your business and go get a job. Because the delivery part, so like say the fun, the easy part, is everything else around it that turns your profession into a business, but you can do yourself rather than relying on someone else to pay you. That's the hard stuff. And so our book and our whole training, we kind of see it actually as a personal development training, because it's the concept of you've got to get in action. And the difference, I think, between, this way I could get shot at by the various people in the industry, but the personal development industry, I think, has the challenge it has is people don't take action, which means it stays a theoretical exercise up here, or an inward, I just go inward, I go down the rabbit hole, I explore all the issues. But if you don't take it into real life, it's just theoretical, or it's in a vacuum, in a bubble. That's why so many people do course after course, or become knowledge junkies. And I admit I was there. And the concept of almost like shelf development. I have the best bookcase in the world of all these books. And yet, what have I done to change my life? I don't take action. I just learn. I just read.
Yeah.
And so we very much wanted to have something that recognizing my issue of that's where I was, just learning. But you have to do something with the development. And so we see people growing a business actually is one of the best personal development tools there is, because it forces you to confront, how do I feel about money? How do I feel about sales? How do I feel about networking, interacting with human beings, or whatever it is? And without that real life pressure of, I have to do it or I don't have money to eat, that actually gives you the motivation to actually confront those issues or those demons or that lack of knowledge or whatever it is. Whereas otherwise it's very easy, and I still do this at times, read an amazing book, personal development book or something, John Demartini's books, for example. My favorite one of his is How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Go to Heaven.
Yeah.
And it is quite a practical book. There's lots of things you can do in there. Have I done all those things? No. But I love reading it because it's entertaining, it's good, it gives me good ideas. But it's, if I truly, to get the best out of that book, I should do every single one of those exercises. And even knowing that I should, I still don't. And I think that's the trap for all of us sometimes.
So I'm intrigued, and I'm putting you on the spot here maybe. What was the last book that you read that inspired you and you thought, oh wow, I'm now going to do this because this book has, given me a different perception and changed my way of thinking on something?
Good question. So probably the last book I read, I finished it just about 2 weeks ago, Matthew Perry's autobiography.
From Friends?
From Friends, Chandler. From Friends. Which is not what you'd expect me to say for a personal development or business development thing.
I don't know, Chris. I know you, and I know that you read quite a wide breadth of things. Yeah. So, yeah.
So his autobiography was only released a few months ago, and something about it, I've watched Friends a bit, but it's never been a thing I've been massively into. So as well, I knew of him, but something about it went, I'm going to pick that up and read that. And it's a very, very candid and open look at his life, when he charts his successes and very much his failures, his struggle with addiction, etc.
Yeah.
Really powerful book, and very, very well written and comedically written. But what stood out to me from that was actually the reminder to basically get off my butt with a project that I've started but parked, which is another book I'm writing called. Sorry.
What is it called?
Yes.
Keeping me in suspense.
Suddenly a blank of it. But damn it, I've got it written down. So it's the title is Choose Your Personality to Create Your Future. And the concept being personality isn't fixed like everyone else thinks. Instead, it's malleable and adaptable, just like any other part of ourselves. We are, as a human being, I think our greatest skill is our adaptability to everything, physical, mental, emotional, etc. And personality is the same. And what stood out to me in Matthew Perry's book is how he adapted both in a positive way and changed personality, as well as a negative way, depending on the drivers. So when he's been in the grip of addiction, his personality and his habits and all that would change because of a negative influence of how am I going to get that next hit or whatever it is.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that whole concept of, you are the, what is it? You are the mean of the 5 people you spend most time with.
Yes. Yeah, the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And it's that concept. So it's both positive and negative. And reading that about him, it really reminded me of we adapt to circumstances. We are not fixed. We are not, oh, you're born an introvert. Oh, you're born an extrovert. And therefore, that is your success or failure in life. It's like, well, what it reminded me is, fortunately, I've never had anything like what Matthew Perry's gone through. But it reminded me of, my natural tendency is very shy and very introverted. And yet, you know me, Jane, you put me on stage and I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I haven't always. I'm still terrified before I get on stage every single time, but I choose to act differently and nurture sides of my personality that give me the opportunities or the results that I want. And so I think that's what stood out to me of the book. One, I was really impressed of Matthew as another human who's struggling with his own stuff despite the apparent success and all that thing.
Yeah. What is success? Yeah.
We can all adapt. We can all change. And either we choose it and therefore change positively, or we're at risk of the change being forced upon us potentially negatively by circumstances or the negative sides of our own personalities.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, I'm intrigued to know what the new business idea is. I'm not asking you to tell us right now. I'm sure we'll find out in due course. So you said you finished reading Matthew Perry a couple of weeks ago. What are you reading now?
Right now, I'm reading one of my favorite go-to authors for many years is someone called Conn Iggulden. He writes historical fiction, and so I was rereading, and then surprised to find he's written another book in the series about Genghis Khan. So it's all about the Mongol basically taking over the world at that time, and totally not personal development or business development in the slightest. And it's basically, you just learn history with a great story is what I like about it. But it's a couple of things standing out to me on that. And I'm reading it because I tend to alternate now between one personal or business development book and then one fiction or historical. I like historical fiction.
Yeah.
So I have a bit of a story as well as a bit of development going on each time. And it really stood out to me, Mongols succeeded largely because they were prepared to do what other people weren't, utterly ruthless and focused on what they were doing, and utterly mobile. And so they had, which I always try to go, okay, what can I learn and apply in the rest of my life? Is the ruthlessness, no, I'm okay not to do that side. But the mobility, as in the reason their armies were so successful was they were horse archers, and they could survive on very little and had no baggage train, as it were. So their armies could move very, very quickly, which was the whole secret of their success, because no one knew where they would appear next.
Like
So, yeah, kind of like ninjas. Well, ninjas and horses with bows and arrows.
fantastic. Let's make a film.
Yeah. So that concept of a sort of mobility and being able to adapt to circumstances because you're not tied down.
Yeah.
That's very powerful in business and in life, because you never know what life's going to throw at you. So the more you can adapt rather than being fixed, the better.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I totally agree with that concept of, you know, always having some art in your life as well as the practical self-help, because I think art, you know, fiction can inspire us just as much as, you know, true life stories or self-development books. And yeah, so I totally up for people, you know, reading fiction and being inspired and changing their perception, because, you know, quite often through reading fiction, it's much easier for us to step in the shoes of someone else and experience what life must be like in a certain situation, and that gives us more understanding and empathy for other people, you know. So yeah.
I also think maybe it's just me, or maybe it's a human thing. I think when we're engrossed in a story, we relax almost like the skepticism, or we relax almost like the judgment side of our brain a little bit.
Speak for yourself, Chris.
Maybe it's just me. When I'm in a story, I'm there, I'm in the book, I'm absorbed by it. And so I'm not then, that little voice is not talking the negative talk or anything like that. It's just being in it. And I think that type of escapism is one of it. I love movies too for that same reason. It's getting lost in a story, I think, is so powerful and liberating.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I find it, if I'm watching something or if I'm reading something where I don't feel any sympathy for any of the characters, I can't carry on with it. It's like I just have no vested interest in what happens, because all these people seem pretty awful. So yeah. See ya. Yeah. So it's I don't know what it says about me or the human condition, that we need to feel some sympathy or empathy with people to be able to go on a journey with them.
And I think it's quite a good safety mechanism for society in many ways, because if you don't feel empathy, then sympathy with people, you're not, hopefully most people like you would switch off from them and then find people they do, which then is how we form more close-knit communities.
Yeah.
So what
I'm sure that Oh, what am I reading? I've literally just finished a book last night called The Stranding by Kate Sawyer, and it's a story, it's kind of an apocalyptic tale of a woman who's based in the UK, and she's had a string of not great relationships, and she decides to just up and go away to New Zealand for a while. And when she gets to New Zealand, Europe and the UK has been obliterated by nuclear war, by the sounds of it, and she's just left stranded in New Zealand. And when she gets there, there's a whale that's been stranded on a beach, so there's kind of like this parallel between the two of them, and the story kind of has flashbacks to her life before the disaster, and then what it's like to live, you know, is there anyone else left on Earth? And so it's a really good book. And strangely, I've always thought that I didn't want to read things like that, because those kind of apocalyptic scenes make me feel anxious. But interestingly enough, I think this is the third book I've read in the last year that's kind of vaguely apocalyptic in some way or another. And actually, I've found great comfort from reading them. Weird, but it's just I guess it's that notion that actually you can get through stuff. So, you know, you can survive. There are ways of surviving, and it doesn't give you a handbook for how to do it. So, you know, hopefully we'll never need one. But it's just like I say, I surprised myself at enjoying those books.
Interesting.
Yeah. It takes a certain amount of fear away.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let's face it, we've been through our own mini apocalyptic thing in the last couple of years of pandemic with an awful lot of fear along with that.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking, what does an apocalypse look like? Because actually there are apocalypses happening in people's lives all the time. If you look at, all the refugees that there are from climate change. So even just looking at California in the last few weeks, where the way it's been flooded, or back in the summer when it was, burning, and their whole lives have been obliterated by natural disaster. And how do you start recovering from that? Because if your whole neighborhood, your whole state, or wherever you live, is gone, wow, so that is quite apocalyptic.
Yeah,
It's not on a
it's a
global
local
scale.
apocalypse.
Yeah. And so I guess the same principles apply, don't they? Yeah.
I'd say that's one of the apocalypse wasn't in my mind, but that's one of the big drivers when I first started coaching other business owners and then led into a book and all the other businesses. It's actually, there's a phrase I heard years ago. I wish I could say I coined it, but no, I heard it from someone else and I love it. It's that we all need to create our own economy, because you never know what's going to happen. So by create your own economy, meaning you have the ability to earn money. You're not reliant on anyone else for your financial security. And I think that's so important, because whether apocalypse happens or whether it's just life happens, small stuff, but being in control of your own finance, and whether you're an employee or a business owner, you can be in control, because if you're an employee, it's about, okay, how can I become more valuable to my employer? So therefore they pay me more. They won't make me redundant. I can help a company grow. Therefore, hey, there's progression plan, promotional, like that type of security. Or as a business owner, it's that whole, well, whether you work on your own or with a team, do you know how to sell or market, get clients, sell, so you have revenue, serve clients? So then the world can fall apart, and you and your loved ones are still okay, because you have your own economy that you're in, I wouldn't say control of, but you have the power to adapt.
Yeah,
I
you've
think
got
that's
choices.
key.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Chris, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I've loved it, and I could talk to you all day.
Likewise.
I don't think that anyone listening or watching would appreciate that. So I'm going to thank you so much. And yes, for anybody who's watching or listening, the book we have been talking about is Grow Your Heart-Centered Business by Chris and Karene Lambert-Gorwyn. Oh, little display there. So, if you are looking to grow your business, then thoroughly recommend it as a read. Gives you lots of clarity, gives you clarity about whether actually you're up for growing your business in the first place. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a delight. All right. Take care.
Bye.
See you on the next episode, everyone. Bye.